You know, in the world of Yotei, shadows dance and steel sinks, but even the sharpest blade can come out of the forge with a few flaws. For a game this huge, the launch is never the end. It's just the beginning. So today, we're going to unsheath the story of its evolution, one patch at a time, to really understand what's inside the latest update, version 1.011. See, every update is like a new chapter, a refinement of the vision. And this latest one, version 1.111, it feels like a really big moment in that journey, like the calm after a long and, let's be honest, sometimes bumpy storm of fixes. But to get why it's so important, we first have to walk the path that got us here. Just think of the game at launch as a newly forged katana. It's powerful, it's beautiful, but it still needs that final sharpening and balancing. Well, this whole post-launch period has been exactly that, a master smith just meticulously hammering out every last imperfection, one patch at a time. The road since launch has been a pretty steady one, right? From that massive day one patch to all the targeted fixes in early October, you can see how each update was a direct response to what we were actually finding in the game. Let's take a closer look at what each of these steps really did. Okay, so it all started with the day one patch, version 1.006. And this wasn't about tiny little tweaks. This was about laying a really stable foundation for the whole experience, making sure the world of Yotei was as solid as it was stunning. The devs really went for the big picture improvements right out of the gate. We saw some huge performance boosts, richer textures in the world that made everything just pop, and a much cleaner user interface. And what's really cool is they even tweaked the gameplay itself, making puzzles way more challenging on higher difficulties for anyone who wanted a true test of skill. All right, so with that foundation set, the next phase was all about hunting down those specific, really disruptive bugs, the true ghosts in the machine that could just totally break your immersion and stop you in your tracks. These were the surgical strikes. And they were absolutely surgical. Patch 1.008 fixed this incredibly frustrating progression blocker in a fiery consequence. You know, the kind of bug that literally just stops you from continuing the story. Then 1.009 came in and tackled a weird mission bug in Kitsune's fate, and even fixed the player's horse, which apparently had a habit of just running off on its own. These fixes were absolutely vital to keep the story flowing. Then we got patch 1.010, which was a pretty major stability overhaul. It took care of a whole range of issues, everything from audio to the UI. But what's really interesting here is that this patch also came with an official list of what wasn't fixed yet, which really set the stage for what was coming next. And this shows the challenge perfectly. Even with all that hard work, some really annoying ghosts were still lurking. Players were still dealing with the wolf blade refusing to switch guards, an oxygen meter popping up in shallow water for some reason, and this nasty infinite death loop in spike pits. Not to mention, a critical mission, The Last Brother, could become completely blocked. The blade was getting sharper, for sure, but it wasn't perfect yet. And that brings us right to today. Update 1.011 has arrived, and its mission is crystal clear. Banish those lingering shadows and deliver the most stable, most seamless version of the game we've ever had. This is the final polish. You can see the approach here was super methodical. They focused on 3 pillars. First, foundational stability, just crushing those crashes and mission blockers. Second, performance refinement, going after ray tracing issues and that awful microstutter. And finally, polishing the whole player experience with little tweaks to audio, controls, and the interface. So what does this actually mean for us when we play? Well, a massive reduction in crashes, a continued cleanup of those mission-stopping softlocks, including the big one in The Last Brother. That dreaded respawn loop, they've addressed it. And for all UPS 5 players, ray tracing performance is now way more stable, and the camera just feels more responsive. When you add it all up, all these technical fixes create something much bigger, a more seamless world. It's really about letting you lose yourself in the story, in the combat, without being ripped out of the moment by some random glitch or crash. And it's not just the big stuff either. 1.0111 brings in a bunch of great quality of life improvements. The audio is better synchronized, the UI is cleaner so text isn't overlapping, and even the loading transitions feel just a little bit smoother. These small touches really add up to make the whole thing feel more polished. So with the game now in its most stable state ever, this quiet has kind of settled over the community. The storm of bug fixes seems to be over. And in that quiet, new whispers are starting to pop up. Whispers about what might come next. And you can see it in the community reactions. Comments like this one, they just speak volumes. It shows the real impact of fixing those mission blockers and save file problems. For players who are totally stuck, this patch wasn't just an update, it was a rescue. But it's not just about getting unstuck, right? It's about how the game feels. And reports are already coming in confirming that the work they did on that microstutter, those tiny little freezes during combat, has made fighting feel way more fluid and responsive. So this leads us to the big final question, doesn't it? With the blade now sharpened and the foundation solid, are the developers finally free to build on it? Is this the end of the fixing phase and the beginning of something totally new? Version 1.11 is so much more than just a number. It's really the culmination of months of hard work to polish this experience. It's the calm after the storm, and it's a stable platform from which, maybe, just maybe, new adventures can finally launch. The story of Ghost of Yōtei is definitely still being written. If you want to follow every new chapter, every secret this world might be holding, make sure you subscribe. We'll be here watching for whatever comes next. Thanks for tuning into this explainer.